Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Kraft, and on behalf of the Omega staff and community, welcome to today's Omega Conversation with John Siddique, entitled Creating a Practical Roadmap for Your Spiritual Journey. Like each of you, Omega is also facing the challenge of these trying times. The impact of COVID has been profound and difficult, but we have endured and are hopefully the better for it. Omega remains dedicated to its mission of service, healing, and transformation for individuals and a wider society, but we can only do so with your continued support. In addition to the generosity of our speakers, free Omega conversations like this are made possible by those who become members. To learn more about how you can support Omega's nonprofit mission, visit eomega.org/become a member. Today we'll open talking with John, hearing about his work and listening to some of his wisdom. And later we will open the conversation up to a satsang or direct questions from you. If you are on Zoom at that time, we ask that you use the raise hand option under reactions in the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. Since our time is brief, we ask that you state a question or a comment or a feeling immediately and allow John to respond when we get to that. And now, without further ado, John Siddique is a teacher, writer, and poet who has published 7 previous books, and now his new one, Signpost of the Spiritual Journey. His online meditations have been downloaded over 2 million times, and his work has been featured in Time, The Guardian, and on the BBC. John has had awakenings throughout his life, as well as a near-death experience that I hope he will share with us. He offers his teachings freely and openly to many people, and it's a great honor to welcome John Siddique. Thank you, John.
Hey, Michael. Hey, everybody. Lovely to be here with you. Thank you so much. I'm very moved to virtually be at Omega, and I'm actually in darkest West Yorkshire at the moment, so it's nice to think of the daylight where you are.
John, can you tell us how you came to the spiritual path, how you found yourself here?
Gosh, straight in there, hey?
Yeah.
Gosh, how to even look at that, really? I think for me, I always knew. I actually have a sense of before this life, before this form, of the kind of the spark of isness that is. And I can remember being 6 years old and having a really strong kind of flash into kind of pure beingness and experience. And that was the first time I can remember. I was actually in a swimming pool at the time. And because at the primary school I used to go to, we'd have swimming lessons once a week. And even at the age of 6, something I liked to do was to kind of swim underwater and kind of then come up. And as I went under the water and then came up, I turned fully to light, as it were. So, but I always had this sense of not being alone, of the wholeness. I used to call it seeing the life in everything. And I thought everybody could see like this. And then it took me till sometime in my 20s to realize that I should really not talk about that too much with people. But this just literally continued the whole time. So even at kind of 9 years old, these things are happening. And I have had a sense of wanting to meditate, of wanting to kind of practice somehow, although not knowing what. And in our house, I would not have got away with it. I grew up in my dad is a Indian Muslim. My mother is an Irish Catholic. And of course, I studied Zen for a very long time, which would be natural. But by the time I got to 13, I kind of had learned that I can kind of, hide what I was doing. And I'd found Stephen Levine's beautiful book, A Gradual Awakening, in the school library, in a Catholic school library. I did buy my own copy, but that kind of saw me through the early days. It's almost like that Patti Smith story of her stealing the Rambo book, but I kept it out so long that it was almost my copy, but I did actually return it in the end and buy my own. And you know, in everything that one has lived through, there's a constancy. There's been this constancy, and it's been, I've been unable to ignore it, although I have tried very hard at times of my life. And then sort of in the last, you know, most recent period, in the last 10, 15 years, then it's been a case of actually that moving directly into the center, as it were. So, you know, the beginnings are not an intention, not a decision, but actually a noticing of what is already there.
It seems like so much of our spiritual suffering is based on us ignoring what we were given at birth and what we always have. And it sounds like that's the case with you. Did you ever have a period in your life where you tried to fight that, or it became very dark?
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, depression in a kind of huge form in my 30s, including a period of time being medicated and so on. And of course, as I understand now, you know, depression is repression, basically, on very deep levels of who we really are, believing in the outer form of who we are and the conditioned self, and that overriding both the kind of sort of bondedness with one's internal life, but also the reality of that life shining out through you, because that's who we are meant to be. But the somebodying process, we talk about this in signposts a lot, the somebodying process that we undergo does everything that it can to bring us into a state of separateness. And then what I think most of us do is that we believe that life is about maintaining that state of separateness by going into that harder, and that, you know, whatever means we take with that. Yet we think at some point it will offer a solution to us where there'll be a wholeness, but we're literally kind of going in the wrong direction if we pursue that. So the answer, as I say, is always in the question. If anybody's ever experiencing that sense of, no matter how hard I try, I seem to be moving away from who I really am instead of inwards, the answer's in the question. Turn round, my friend, turn round with love and start coming back the other way.
That's beautiful. We spoke offline, of course, and you talked about what happened to you in India when you died on the table. Could you share some of that now? Because even though this is not about identity, it's about experience, and that sometimes helps to hear that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I need to precurse that very slightly in 2012, and I can remember it to this day. And you'll hear other people talk about this as well. Eckhart speaks about his experience of this. I'd reached a point in my life where the person that I tried to make myself into and survive through could not take me anymore. It couldn't be taken anymore. And it collapsed. It actually collapsed one day. A friendship fell apart, and it was like a kind of trigger that I actually remember standing in the bedroom at home, and I actually went, oh my God, it's all a lie. And then I fell over on the bed, weeping my guts out and howling this animal-like howl and crying for several hours. And you would hope that, you know, the dissolution of the ego in the moment would be a quick and painless thing. But there followed 2 years of having to turn around and face what was there, basically. And admit to myself that I didn't know who I was, what my life was really for, how to love. And there was nobody to talk to about this at all, really. But having been a teacher for a long time, both in Buddhist tradition and outside of it, and loving some of the poets that I loved and so on, I could hear almost like God crying out through the spaces between all this stuff, which was just, come home, learn to come home. And so I began actually attending to the work. What if we do this for real? And this is a question I have a lot about people in spiritual life, that we can kind of maintain it in a way that still is like an adding to ourselves. But at some point, we have to actually come home, and we do everything we can to kind of keep it out there as a nice spiritual thing that we do. And you can't force anybody to change, but the moment has to come at some point where you kind of turn. And so through healing, psychologically, and through real attention to practice, the Buddha pointed at enlightenment. Jesus pointed at his heart. He said, the kingdom of heaven is within. The Kabir, poet Kabir says this, and, this person says that. So I thought, okay, I've got nothing to lose. I may as well do it. I may as well do what I said I'm supposed to be doing, finally, because the other way is only death. And one had what, I don't know, I never know the words for it, but that shift of consciousness where the old false self just faded away. The ego self faded away. And by the time we got to 2014, I'm going to use the word me, but I don't mean it in that way. I was who I am. I am the I am that I am, as it were, the light shining through this vessel. And I thought, good, I'm done, I'm finished, that's it. And so every year I go to India, because my wife lives in India half the time because her daughter is there, my son is here. And I just got off the plane, and it was December the 14th, I think. And this pain started, this pain, really chronic, worst thing I've ever felt. And it was, I didn't know what it was at the time. But a couple of days later, we went to the hospital. I'm absolutely screeching, sweating in pain, shivering. And I was misdiagnosed as having a microbial infection. And it was so bad that, even though they gave me an antibiotic, I had to go back again. And thankfully, I found this amazing doctor, Dr. Trahan, who diagnosed what was going on. But my infection was so bad that there was no way I could be operated on or anything like that. I was far too weak. And so I was 3 days in the intensive care unit on 20-minute watch, only on fluids and things like that. And then on the night of the 18th of December, Dr. Trahan came and said, I really think it's better that I just talk to you about this, but you're not going to be here tomorrow. This is it. And so I had a beautiful opportunity, not one that I would wish on anybody else, to ask myself a particular question, which is, where did I want to be in this moment? Do I want to be in the stories of what should be, what should have been? This person has done this to me. If only my life had been like that. Or do I actually want to be here? Because even though I've got maybe a few hours to live, this is still my life. And presence just came, basically. And not an acceptance of death, but an acceptance of life in that moment. And I actually lived till 9 o'clock the next morning. And I knew I was going. So I decided, my wife was sitting next to me, and I knew I was going. So I said my goodbyes. I said, I think I'm on the way. And I went into meditation. Basically, I thought, if I'm going to go, I'm going to go. And holding Abba's hand, and I thought, I'm going to go properly. And and I went. Apparently, I was gone for about 5 minutes, and without being resuscitated, 5 minutes later, I came back, and the infection wasn't gone completely, but had dropped to a manageable level. And they were just like they didn't understand what was going on. And I guess, trying to talk about being. See, I don't know, because the body died, but I didn't die. The soul didn't die. So I got to hang out with God for a good period of time. And of course we'd met before, because this feeling in my childhood and in the awakening experiences was exactly the same. But I remember actually in the other place saying out loud to God, "Oh, it's you," because the recognition was so striking, and the "oh, it's you" was actually like seeing your best friend who you haven't seen for so long, and your heart is just completely gladdened. And there was also a knowing that nothing I had ever done had put me a fraction of anything away from the truth and from God, and from love. That we are acceptable entirely, in this way. And then I was asked, and you'll hear this, I'm sure you'll have heard this from other people, if I wanted to stay here or go back. And I could feel that Abba wouldn't be okay. Not grieving, I mean, she literally wouldn't probably survive my dying at this time. And so I know I use this when we have arguments. So I said, and the intention came to go back. So I was told, I was given a message for myself, which was leave your work now and go talk to people, which is then, I came when I healed afterwards, I kind of stopped doing so much of the literary work and just started. We use the word teacher, but I don't know if that's the right word, but somebody who holds space at least. Um, and what's surprising is those conversations continue. We were talking just before we started a little bit about, this kind of sense of connection. And at the moment, I just feel very blessed because there's a very direct connection kind of in a communication going on. And yet, I'm aware that somebody will go, "Oh, no, there's not." And that can't be real. And you're making it all up. And that's absolutely fine, because, we're not here to prove truth to anybody. We all have to find out for ourselves. So as Gil Scott Heron used to say, if anybody wants to say that to me, peace go with you, brother.
Oh. That is so beautiful, John. And yeah, some people don't believe, but everybody's in their own place.
Yeah. No. I tend to quote Jung at this point. I don't know if you've seen the face-to-face interview with Carl Jung, and he's banging his pipe on the table, and the interviewer is asking him about God, and Jung says, "Well, no, I don't believe. I don't believe. I know. I know." And so I want to say I know, but because belief has got nothing to do with it. In fact, the giving up of belief is probably the quickest way to actually find out what's real.
What's real? There's lots of words people use to describe extraordinary experience and reconnection with the divine. You often use the words love and light. And is there a particular reason? Is that how it feels? Is that what it feels like to you when you talk about aligning with love or expressing light?
Well, it's interesting. I was just thinking the other day, I wish I'd have had this thought when I was writing the book. So there'll have to be a kind of a second one at some point. I was thinking the other day, and maybe I can ask everybody here with us, if you would, for a moment, will you just take a moment's reflection with us? What would God feel like to you? In terms of qualities, what would God feel like to you? Or what would the sacred feel like? Or whatever word you want to use, what would it actually feel like? What qualities does it have? And you would feel loved. I'm sure you would feel a sense of belonging. I'm sure you would feel strength and wholeness and acceptance and so on and so on and so on. And maybe in the chat afterwards, you could share with us, what that is. And I think what we do then is we make this great spiritual mistake, thinking that we need some massive transformative experience in order to experience the sacredness of life. But love is a fact that goes beyond our minds, and which of us have not fallen in love despite whatever our head has said, who hasn't automatically reached a hand out to help somebody? Compassion is innate in us. I mean, our training tries to stop us from these things. So if we, in whatever realistic way possible, through ordinariness of who we are tender, open up spaces of belonging with each other, listen to each other, then surely that's where God is. In the ordinariness, the quickest route to what we're talking about, the sacred, in our lives, is what we already have, which is why I always say that this is a path of your ordinary life. And when we're talking about a path of meaning, surely meaning is love, belonging, the same qualities that you will have thought of with sacredness. And so, of course, we each have our blockages, and we each have the things that stand in the way. But at the same time, the way through them is not with a bulldozer, but by finding the smallest real aspect of those qualities within that, even for the bad experience that we're having, not to keep it, but to pierce it and move through it.
That just rings true. So it rings true. I'm also reminded, we were speaking about light earlier. I'm also reminded of the classical tarot card, the card of the Hermit, which is an experience everybody is in right now, with everybody being remote or locked down or distant. And the card of the Hermit card traditionally has a hand. The Hermit's hand is at the center of the card, holding a lantern shining with light.
Yeah.
The only way a hermit can do that work is to hold and embrace and nurture that light. And now we're so isolated from one another, but light is something, as you described, that light and love can make us feel and remind us that we're all connected.
Absolutely. And I think, by any means necessary, quite honestly, so this is great. It would be lovely to actually be together in person, and there is so much more in person together. The actual sense of beingness with each other is increased greatly. But we can do so much this way, but we mustn't get fixed in this way and think that this is a replacement for actually being with each other. But in every way that we can, I think the invitation for every one of us is to allow whatever is real towards the light within us. And that's not a leap away from the self, but actually a kind of turning back to the garden of life, a recognition of who you actually are, in those things. It's not even kind of, intention based, because it's not. One of my favorite teachers is Sri Maharaj Nisargadatta, who, I'm always dropping this quote, but he says, the mind creates the abyss, but the heart crosses it. And when he's talking about that, he's not talking about some magical heart that you have to invent. He's talking about John's heart, Michael's heart, the only person I can see at the top of the screen is Gloria and Joseph. Gloria's heart, Joseph's heart, Scott's heart. Those are the hearts. We haven't got somebody else's heart. We don't need to be somebody else. We need to know our own heart.
Well, that's why you wrote the book too, isn't it? I have it in my hand, Signpost of the Spiritual Journey. It's a practical guide for finding your own map and following.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it's really easy to say, this system is the system that you have to adopt, and kind of get lost in that, because very often what we adopt is a load of cultural things, mistaking the culture of the thing for the light itself. And so it's okay. Those things can be really, really beautiful. But I personally, in my in this life, I didn't have time for all that other stuff. So I just went straight for the thing itself. The soft, gooey filling in the middle, really. And with signposts, it's an invitation. It's not a this is how I do it. You do it my way, sort of thing. And I will be your teacher. It's you are your own teacher. Your heart is your own teacher. I'm happy to have written this book if it's useful to you. But the only person who's going to feel that hint of truth within themselves is you. So I just try to describe processes of engagement with that, all stages of the journey, from the very first arising of questions of like, who am I and what am I here for? You can't go wrong with those two questions. They work all the way through on spiritual life, right the way through to sort of realization itself, in a way. And yet another mistake that I see is that we have some experience because something shifts and we think we're complete, we think we're done. And then our ego can attach to that. And, first thing we do is we try to make a career out of it. You see this all over YouTube. I took I microdosed 3 days in a row, and now I'm a teacher of, the divine knowledge, and, meet my twin flame. And God love us all, quite honestly, but but we learn the hard way that actually anything you think you're standing on is going to go. Anything you think you can stand on will be taken away from you, no matter how much money you throw at it and how much PR and marketing. It will go. But it's not going away. It's going so that you can carry on unfolding. So you have to learn to embrace the continuous unfolding. Enlightenment or awakening or sacredness, or whatever word you would want to use, is a constant unfolding of awareness within itself, within our human form. And we keep, even kind of quite far on, we will keep trying to grasp onto it and say, that's it, this is who I am an awakened being, I am this, I am that. But actually, the sea never does that. The sea just goes like, in and out, and the waves move, and we just move with that, basically. And so if you start to you get your surfboard out and go with it, it's actually a much more beautiful experience, the constancy of unfolding. And so within the book Signposts, I wanted to kind of point out blockages that we meet at every point in the journey, but also offer direction as to what we might look at to allow the unfolding to continue, and the biggest one will always be ego will attach to anything. It will attach to literally anything, and will always try to find its way. But then there's also our conditioning and our unhealedness and so on. So if we don't deal with things like our vasana and our samskaras, if we don't deal with our kind of psychological health, then you can have spiritual experience, but then the lamp that we shine through will have all kind of bits of broken glass and things. And far better to kind of honor the light of truth by allowing our lives to be cleaned and healed and, made more whole.
I want to show everybody what the book looks like, just so you can find it when you go looking for it. It's like this, only with the letters. I'm seeing the letters backwards, so it's not like.
You're very kind, Michael. Thank you so much.
I love the way you talk about this experience, and you make it so real for everybody, not just for your own personal path. And I know you share this with people, and as you said earlier, you create space. You do this on a regular basis, don't you? I mean, not everybody knows what satsang is. So if you could say a little bit about what you do on a weekly basis, that would be powerful.
Yeah, well, on a weekly basis, I teach a lot on a couple of apps, and I have recordings on a particular app and so on. And I hold spaces in that way. But and those are great. But once a month, I have a thing called the open space meditation, and this is going to kind of come in more now. There's going to be like a kind of members area of my website that's called the open space itself. And it arose in a really interesting way during the time of America's last president. I was communicated with, or something moved in me, because I could see good people getting lost in hatred. And, we think of somebody like Ram Dass, who was still with us at that time. And what you may not know is that Ram Dass would keep a photograph of every president, the current president, on his puja table. So he had a photograph of your 45th president on his table, and I'm sure he had a photograph of your 46th when he went, if that time works out. I'm not sure time wise, but anyway, I realized that duality will try to replicate itself. Maya, Mara, the force of separation will always try to assert itself. If we look at what the news does now, what politics does now, and so on, it tries to say, we are the good people, these people are the evil people. If only we can get rid of people like that. And it turns that in any ways that it can. It will start wars. It will break up families. It will, any way it can get in, it will get in. And this is part of the societal conditioning stuff that we have been building ourselves for, the entire history of the human period. So we've actually wound this material of duality into ourselves, because the minute you have even the smallest taste of your own soul, most of that dies down, quite honestly. You just go, oh, bloody hell, and it can be anything that kind of changes it. The smallest shift of awareness or consciousness is the only thing that takes us out of the wheel of life and death, running round and round and round. So instead of and I realized that everybody's inheritance is the soul. Everyone's inheritance is life itself, God, whatever you would call it. So that there was a need to kind of create a space in which, when we meet, we don't discuss those dualistic things. Not that we're ignoring them, but if we meet at that level first, we will continue the duality. Whereas if we meet in presence and silence, and the Sanskrit term for noble silence is Arya Maun, which is something we can begin practicing in our own lives, and I talk about in signposts, or practicing with each other. Our souls and our beings tend to fall in love with each other because that's our natural movement. So I created this thing called the open space meditation, where everybody can come. And we just sit in silence. And instead of ringing a bell, I'll read out a couple of pieces from the Tao Te Ching or something like that, because people sometimes need a little bit of something to reflect on. And an hour passes pretty much in silence. We allow each other to see each other on camera so that we're in being with each other, rather than meditation being some I'm in myself having this intense spiritual experience sort of trip. And it's just easy presence with each other, keeping it quite light. And then in the last part, the last 10 minutes, so if people want to share from that silent space, then they can do. So to me, that is satsang. You know, in the old way of looking at satsang, it was the guru is on a kind of throne-like chair on the stage. Somebody's put a lamp behind him so that this screen would be illuminated, looking like I have a halo. And you know, we all get a bit special about things. But actually, we've gone beyond that now. And satsang is derived from the word sangha, of course, which means community. So it's a community of those who want to be together in truth. So this right now is satsang. You and me, Michael, is satsang. And of course, if somebody is, you know, the holder of that space, or the more conscious person in the room, or so on, it's not like stripes of specialness on your arm or something like that. But we notice that it will naturally kind of fall to that person to be the holder of that space. So, you know, we all have natural authority as part of who we are. And something that I would like to encourage people with is that we begin to reach into our natural authority and take that out into the ordinary world. You know, it's something that we need now more than ever. Anybody here, I'm going off on a tangent a little bit, who feels that they have some solidity of presence and authenticity and awareness in them, I want you to go and run for office, baby. You know, because better you doing it than somebody else who hasn't got some awareness and consciousness.
That's a huge paradox, and you're right. We need more of that. John, if you're okay with it, we'll open it up to questions from other viewers.
Yeah.
So if you...
Thank you so much, Michael. Beautiful. Thank you.
It's a great honor, John. Thank you. Anybody who puts your hands up, I'm going to look for raised hands. And we can call on those people.
Yeah.
You can raise your hand by, let's see, down at the raise hand under reactions below.
You can see that Michael and I share the same barber, everybody.
We do, and the same tailor as well.
The same tailor, yeah. We can.
All right.
This is the true spiritual uniform, people. Glasses, black shirt, and a shaved head.
Let's see. I am not seeing them. So
the three with raised hands. I'm looking in the participants. So we've got Ellen. Hey, Ellen.
Hello, John. You unmuted me. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Well, I didn't unmute you, but we have this marvelous team behind us, which is one of the joys of being at Omega. And so there are all sorts of wonderful elf-like people, in the beautiful sense of the word elf, kind of sorting things out for us.
Hello, John. It's wonderful to be here at this moment with you. I've been traveling with you for about a year now.
Yeah, you're wonderful, Ellen.
And just a few things that I want to share from what you have said. The mighty oak tree is in each acorn, and so is higher consciousness or God in each of us. And I felt that from your sharing. And also, teaching uses the mind, which is, it sort of gets filtered from through each of us. Learning is another's experiences, sparking one's own experience. And that's why I think your book is so perfect in its essence, and in this time that it's coming to fruition and into our consciousness, because you can't really teach me, but you can give me signposts along the journey, so I don't feel alone and I feel encouraged. And deepest gratitude for that, John. Thank you.
Oh, bless you, Ellen. That's really what we were hoping for. You can't guarantee this. You can't, guarantee that you're going to go that way and it will work. But myself and my astonishing editor, Fiona Robertson, and the team at Watkins and Penguin Random House, we really turned up with this book. I think I've told you before, when they offered me the book deal, I initially said no, that I didn't want to write a book. And it was only because I asked inwardly whether I should that the literally the kind of the kick up the bottom came, which is, go on, get out there kind of thing. Do your best. It doesn't matter if it's perfect or not. Just try your best. And of course, Ellen brings up a really important point, in that the mind in service of the light in us is a tremendous thing. And we all have our little flavors of genius. And if we will allow the light to shine through those, then we actually, you say, you come across things like, find your soul purpose and all this sort of thing. Well, the way that we can do that is to allow the light to shine through our specific areas. And of course, I was a writer and seem to still be a writer. I can't seem to escape from it. And so you let God use the tools that you have, basically. You hand them over. And of course, you use all of your human skill and strength that you can to bring something meaningful into the time that we live in. That's all one can do in a way.
Okay, we got Linda next. I'm gonna unmute you, Linda.
Linda.
Hi, John. Hi, John. I said 5 years I've been following you. This is the closest we've been in the same room, just about.
It is. One day.
Yeah.
You're amazing, Linda. I love you so much.
So are you. I've followed you all along, and you've helped through so many things, But I'm in the middle of reading Signposts, and I just want to make a comment. You really have to read it very slowly. I'm finding going through it. I'm only through a few of the signposts so far, because you take me into another journey. It's like I start on a pathway, and then I stop and I think about what you just said, and I go on and on down a different path and find different things. Things have been changing in my life over the past month. So I would just advise everybody to take your time, read it very well, read it several times, and you find different ways to go into it and go down that path.
Yeah, so that was absolutely intentional. I put in like pauses for reflection and meditations and and journaling exercises. Partially because I know that a lot of people tend to read books for information, and Signpost is not a book of information. It can be. You can read it like that if you want, but I wanted it to actually be almost like, if you start reading this book, by the time you hopefully get to the end of it, there will be some more space for awareness within you, so it actually does the work with you as you do it, as it were. But I try to hide that as well as possible. Yeah,
but the breaks are wonderful. They're at a good spot. They make me stop, and do something from there. So
yeah. Oh, bless you. I'm glad you're enjoying it.
I'm loving the book, loving it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Linda. You're looking really well. How's your heart?
That's okay. Right now it's something else, but that's okay.
You've got good color and you look really well.
Oh, yeah, I'm feeling healthier, yes. It's very cold here today in Chicago, so.
Bless you, Linda. Thank you. Lovely to see you. Bless you.
All right, we got Helen up next.
I may start crying, but that's okay.
That's okay. I'm a big crier myself.
Well, and I've had a lot of that happening in the last few days, which is totally okay. I follow you on Insight Timer, and one of the things that you said in this conversation today was opening up spaces of belonging with each other, which I think is, at least for me, such an important calling. I had the vision of, all of us being the universal everyone, being in the same room, wherever that is, here on planet Earth, it seems to be right now, and really caring and loving each other. And, you mentioned the pictures of the president that were on the altar, and as soon as we get past the idea of divisiveness, and the total understanding that we are here to honor and love. And that's it. Everyone at all times on the planet and in every other galaxy that we are going through. So I just really wanted to thank you very much for this conversation.
Bless you, Helen.
And for
Yeah.
your presence, for who you are.
No, thank you so much. Yeah, absolutely. And of course, loving in this way doesn't mean that we then allow people's kind of illness, their somebodyness or ego to, or brokenness or unhealedness to continue impacting upon us. One of the things that happens with the movement towards wholeness in oneself is the kind of the natural occurrence of boundaries. And if we think about love in its real sense, love is fierce. We were talking, we had a kind of pre-meet the other day for this session, and I think it was here, and I was saying, wisdom, whatever you would call it, we think it kind of comes with a bunch of flowers for us, but it actually carries a sword at the same time. So it's like a flower and a sword simultaneously. So, loving, for example, somebody like a president or a politician doesn't mean allowing for them to continue hurting us or hurting themselves. That person is in dreadful pain and is doing the best that they can, looking for fulfillment and completion through the actions that they're taking. It's just that they may be taking us all to hell with them, thinking that they're on the right track. And we use duality as a way of protecting ourselves. We throw this shield of duality up. And I'm not talking about one kind of politician or another. I'm talking about all of them. Quite honestly, it's standard operating policy to kind of use duality in this way. And so we look for the crack of wholeness in everything. We look for the, I would just change Leonard Cohen's line a little bit. It's not there's a crack in which the light gets in, and we need a crack where the light gets out. So we kind of, and we can do that by our awakening, by our movement to truth. It changes the energy of the whole world in a way. But then we also need action. We need to move into action. And action is love, compassion. Nisargadatta used to say that compassion is love in action towards another's pain. And so it might be that we don't agree on the route that is being taken because we can see that that's set in duality, that it is adhering to just continuing duality. So we need to be the voice of wholeness, but it's not a war. It's the transformational aspect of love itself.
Yes, and I do understand everything you just shared. I wonder if, as we connect with each other, and I know this is sometimes difficult for people to understand, maybe unconditionally love people, not agree with some of their actions, but unconditionally love them. I had the vision of looking into somebody's eyes and just repeating with the energy of it, I love you. I love you. I love you. With, I hope, the belief that would touch their soul at some time or in some way where there could be transformation.
Yeah. I mean, wonderful Pema Chodron, who will be at Omega this year, she teaches a practice called tongle, which is often misunderstood. And we do need to be careful with it because we can have egoic intention of trying to kind of push love to make somebody change. And so it can be coming from a kind of willful place in ourselves. But if we actually allow for the reality of love in ourselves, and so the way I would perform tongle and say with a president or somebody like that, or I do this with, if there's something difficult going on in the world, you can allow from a place of kind of steadied presence. You take the time to actually work on being in at least present moment awareness and steadied presence. And kind of, you might need to build up to that over a lifetime or 10. Then you allow for that person, because in many ways you have to kind of see, not believe in or imagine, but actually see the soul of that other person, not the stuff we will disagree with. And this doesn't mean that we don't then work with the stuff that's disagreeable, but you actually see the light in that person in some way. And I can do that with the person that we are kind of not really referring to, for example. It's quite easy to see the child that's there, for example. It's clear as day. The life in that being is as clear as day as it is in every single person. This is why I stopped talking about things in my 20s, because I'd be saying, but no, can't you see that? And people are absolutely hell-bent on continuing duality, even when they think they are spiritual people a lot of the time, right? In fact, spiritual people can be the absolute worst at this. And so we have to kind of let go of our ideas of being spiritual, let go of our spirituality. For what? For what's real, for the love that we can feel, for that in any real way. And until that commitment is in place, the changes do not occur. But in terms of the tonglen, and allowing for your heart not to be closed, for you trying not to literally kind of, force something upon them. But at the same time, the natural authority and natural morality that arises in one because of connection to spirit or God or whatever you would say, then literally will allow you to see ways to kind of counter the damage or to work. I'm not kidding when I say more of us should be taking office.
John, Amanda has her hand raised.
Yeah, Amanda.
Sorry, Amanda.
Hiya.
Hey there.
From Derry.
You're in Bury.
I am.
Oh my God, you're just down the road.
I know I am. It's not a question. I don't know what it is, but it wants to come out. When I first started hearing you, I think the first thing was your accent. I thought, oh, where's that bloke from? And then
Rochdale originally.
Yeah. And then I started hearing, like, you talk about the ordinary, and I'm a bit in myself at the moment, so I haven't got all the words, but I recognized me, and it still is a very, very powerful kind of experience, because what this stuff that you're talking about, it's almost like it's not almost like, it is like a huge guilty secret that I don't know how to be with. So, when I'm around, you explain things, and then I go, that's what's just happened in that room in Salford with him and her. No talk of connection and love and it's just not that kind of language, and yet it is. I don't know if this is making any sense.
Makes absolute sense.
And I think what I am feeling is that I've got this word, it's a blend of excited and shitting it, which is excited. And that's kind of, yeah. Because I know this of which you speak, and I am, and then I go into spiritual world and new age world, and it makes my skin crawl, because I just don't know quite what to do. I don't know if that makes any sense. I'm not asking for a diagnosis, but there's a bit of me that's sort of going, the real is what is the real.
The real is the real. That's exactly it. And it does. It feels like a guilty secret. But before we do, can you tell me about your fascia? No, I'm pulling your leg.
Yeah.
No, what I was going to say is that the kind of the answers in the question, Amanda, if you reflect on it for yourself, I would offer you, but it's only for your own reflection, and you have to obviously see for yourself. Within this experience, within everything that you're saying, there is something that traditionally we would call the ground of being. There is a solidness, there's a ground, right? Now, the duality of the world will go, well, you've got to be a spiritual kind of person, or you've got to align yourself with this group, or you have to kind of do this, or you have to kind of make that kind of post on social media. Forget all of that. None of that matters in any way. The outward form is usually a uniform when we talk about spirituality that we're trying to kind of show other people. We don't have to show anybody anything, because the light is a fact. You are a fact. Your life is a fact, and the love in you is a fact. So we steady ourselves by, through our practice, beginning to know that we have the ground of being in us, not as a belief, not as an intention, not as a made up thing, but it is absolutely tangible. You know, early ways of working with this. There's far further ways of going. But if you are ever feeling kind of completely out of sorts, we won't go too far with this. But that, if you just access your senses, and anybody with us can try this right now. For example, you feel the sense of your clothes against your skin. So we actually do something kind of technical almost. You notice that sensation of clothes and skin. And notice where that's kind of being met by your awareness. It's kind of met before the mind. And so you can then start feeling into, you know, what we term the life in the body, or the sense of beingness and aliveness in the body. Now, we don't hold ourselves there and try to stay there, but we just keep returning at times where we feel unstable, perhaps, or we work on it as a kind of daily practice. And you'll find that the awareness that is the solid ground of who you are is then starts to kind of show itself through. You don't need to tell anybody about it. I didn't speak for a couple of years after the big shift, as it were. I kind of just stopped talking, and partially because I didn't have the old words that I used to have. So we don't need to kind of push ourselves forward with this, but rather establishment of of knowing the ground of being within the self and the wholeness of self is the work to do.
John, I want to. I think we're out of time, John.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I want to thank everybody who's raised their hands and who's contributed in the chat, and more to come. John will be actually teaching at Omega Retreat this year. When is it? August 28th to September 2. So put that in your calendar. But
we haven't sorted that out yet, Michael. But
we're working on it.
It's a surprise. I haven't mentioned it out loud yet. So, but anyway, yes. So there's the intention that I will be at Omega in August. So that's absolutely beautiful.
So thank you, John. It's been a tremendous pleasure, and I thank everybody for sharing all that they have. And thanks to John.
Bless you, everybody. Thank you for being here. You are all welcome at the open space, of course. Just check my website. Free to join it or donate or whatever you like. But come anyway, you know, just turn up. Just come anyway. And lots of love to you. Thank you, Omega. Thank you, Michael. Beautiful. I'm so glad we have discovered each other.
Likewise. Thank you, John.
Bless you.